Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And today we are going to talk about beauty in public life.
No. We're going to talk about beauty in the Republic, why art matters to civic life.
Exactly. And that is a great topic because architecture is just something that inspires people.
It is.
Or it can, I should say. It doesn't always.
And so can art. And this is a show. You're probably sitting there listening and thinking, well, don't you guys normally talk about civics? And yes, that's true. That's the focus of our show. But civics is more, I think, than just laws and elections and institutions, because people don't live in those institutions or in the laws. They live in cities and towns and communities, and we participate with one another in city council chambers, in courthouses, and museums, and libraries, and public spaces, town squares. And I think that's a big part of civics, and I thought this would be a great topic for today.
Yeah. Well, you know, the structures that we are in and that we occupy frame what we do. So you come into a store and you've got a big box store and you've got all these shelves, that's going to frame how you look at what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But if you go into a church, do you want to go into a church and all you've got is a bunch of shelves with random stuff all over it? Or do you want to go in a church that draws you up and inspires you and makes you just feel closer to God?
Right.
And architecture can do that.
Right.
And art can do that. When you look at a picture, but you can look at a picture and it can make you feel things or see things or just build your spiritual connection and your civic connection.
I agree. And I think, speaking about architecture or just the way a community is laid out or planned, that can be inspiring. A beautiful place can uplift you. It can give you hope. It can create a feeling of stewardship and the desire to continue to keep it a beautiful place. On the other hand, when we see communities, like it's for probably the better part of 100 years now, and we've got a historian with us today
I don't know.
who can correct me if I'm wrong. So let me introduce James Hodges.
Hello.
History and political science teacher, and he's joining us today, and so he's here to correct me and wrap my knuckles with a ruler if I say something incorrect. But I think for probably the better part of 100, maybe 150 years, Americans have been moving into cities, and you can go out into the Panhandle or West Texas, and you can see these towns that once were and are no more, and they've become desolate places. And I hate to use the word ugly, but they're kind of ugly now. There's nobody there to do the stewardship.
It's sad.
It's sad, and there's a feeling of desperation there. And in some places, our inner cities have become that way too. People have vacated the inner cities and gone into the suburbs, and the inner cities have experienced a decay, and that causes despair. And so I think architecture and our public art is important in inspiring us to be good stewards of what we have.
And it brings people. I agree with you because I live in College Station, and Bryan, Texas has done a big deal about revitalizing downtown. Mm-hmm. And people go to downtown because when we were in college, you didn't go to downtown Bryan, no. Especially at night. You weren't going to go to downtown Bryan, where today, they have First Friday. They have a big festival every month, and they have people coming because they have revitalized downtown Bryan. It has become a center for the community again.
Right. I'm reluctant to bring this up now that you've mentioned College Station and Bryan, but Austin had a similar experience in the 80s. Nobody wanted to cross the river and go down South Congress. There wasn't anything there worth looking at, and they have done a tremendous job of drawing people across the river. And it's a wide river, but it's not so wide that you wouldn't want to walk across it, right? But for whatever reason, in the 80s, you just didn't go into South Congress. But they've done a tremendous job, and I think San Antonio's done a tremendous job with their downtown of of keeping it relevant. And, the Riverwalk in the 69 hemisphere, or was that 68? But even now, the constant, renewal of like Hemisphere Plaza and other places.
Yeah. But sometimes when you see some of these revitalizations, you look at what they build, like when they add new big buildings, and it's almost just a cube. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, that does not inspire me. So sometimes the revitalizations, I think, sort of fall flat. You talked about some of these dying towns in Texas, and you'll go to them and they'll be dying. And in the center of town, you'll see this courthouse that is just a work of art. It is incredibly beautiful. And I think people understood back in the day that, yes, we are going to work hard, we scrabble, we plant, we harvest, but we're going to make something beautiful in the center of our community that can inspire us. And they'd make these wonderful courthouses, and I don't always see that anymore. I mean, City Hall in Boston is, gosh, one of the most ugliest things I've ever seen. Just a big concrete monstrosity. And I see a lot of the bigger city halls in cities doing that. Now, fortunately, our city hall here in Boerne, under your tutelage, is somewhat somewhat of a more attractive building that fits in with the sort of limestone look, right?
Yeah. We got some heat on that.
You did, but it looks nice.
Yes.
And it draws us up and thinks, okay, this is the home of our government.
Beyond being attractive, it's durable, which I thought was important. So when we were going through that City Hall debate, we were going to vacate a building that was originally the Boerne High School and had served as City Hall for over 50 years. And that building is still around today, and it's going to be reused now as a school once again, this time a private school. But whoever decided to build that way back whenever that was constructed in late 40s, early 50s, they didn't just do what we would do today, let's get a piece of land, knock everything down, make it flat, and do some tilt wall construction and build what could be a Safeway or a city hall. They built something monumental. The school district grew, and it was no longer functional as a high school. The city of Boerne bought it, moved in there. They redid the inside a few times. Then they grew too large for that, and they built their new city hall. But that building is still standing. And it reminds me, when Americans go to Europe, we're going because we want to see these old castles, right?
Yeah.
We want to see these old, we want to see a parliament. We want to see these old buildings where history took place, and they're beautiful buildings to look at.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody across the pond who said, I want to go and look at the construction of a Costco or an H-E-B. Right? Now, they do want to see our Costco because of the enormity of it, right? Yeah. When I had our exchange student from France living with us, she just couldn't believe the size of our H-E-B and how much we had in it. But she never commented on the architecture of it. They want to see our culture. Yeah. They have no interest in our buildings.
Yeah. But buildings are a part of your culture.
I think government buildings are important because my family, since my kids were young, we've tried to see all 50 state capitals. And we've been to 40 of them. Me and my wife have. Our kids haven't been to all of them because they're grown and they're on their own now. But me and my wife have seen 40 state capitals. And the capitals that don't fit the mold. I mean, we just recently, my daughter's in the Coast Guard and she's in Hawaii, so we went out there and saw the Capitol in Honolulu, and it literally just looks like a library. When you come up to it, you would never know this is the government building.
Right.
And the people were very nice. I hate to, because I'm about to say it was a horrible Capitol. It was probably the worst Capitol we visited. It was like, well, where's the House meet? Where's the Senate meet? And they showed us. I mean, we found them, right. But it was blah. You know, and so you remember those more than, because we've seen, Texas has a beautiful Capitol. I mean, I love it, Louisiana's is just a skyscraper, basically. They were like, we want to make it as high as possible, so you remember the ones that are different.
Right.
More, and it's not because you remember them in a good way.
Right. And, those buildings, in the past, we would build a church and you knew it was a church. We would build a state capitol and you knew it was a state capitol, right? You build a city hall and you knew it was a city hall. A museum was a museum, a library. You knew what a high school looked like, and I'll cite, for example, Jefferson in San Antonio. It's probably one of the most beautiful high schools in the San Antonio area. The high schools that get built now, I better be careful. I'm going to step in it. There's nothing that lifts your spirit about a lot of the modern construction. Nothing that says, oh yeah, this is durable, this is going to last, this is going to inspire generations, people are going to want to preserve this. We have these in San Antonio, across Texas, we have these historical societies that go around and preserve not just history but buildings, architecture that are significant. I don't think that's going to happen 100 years from now, because nobody's going to say, well, we need to preserve the new high school. It's architecturally significant.
Yeah, buildings speak to us. Mm-hmm. And they may not come out and tell us what to do much, but they speak to us in a way, I don't even know the best way to put this, but a good building will inspire you. It will draw you up. A good church will draw you to look up, to imagine your connection with the holy realm kind of thing. And it's important. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, you'll have a church in a strip center, and I'm afraid that just doesn't draw my soul up and inspire me to be the best Christian I can be kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the counter argument to that is that, well, it's not about the building, it's about the spirit inside, which I understand. But there's something biblical about building the better building. Solomon didn't build something, somewhere on the side of town that was convenient. He looked at that and he said, hey, it wasn't even him, it was the dad said, hey, I'm sitting here living in this palace and I've got the Lord's Ark in a tent. Right. Yeah. And so we need to do better by that. So it's the first fruits thing, it's like bringing the best forward.
Right. Right. And I'm not trying to say that the church controls our spirituality. I'm just saying that it encourages us to pursue that. I mean, you can go out into nature. I mean, I've seen churches out in the mountains and they're simple, but there's just something about the way it's put together that it just draws you up and spiritually just lifts you, so.
Sure. Hard break time.
With that, we're going to take a quick break. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron and our visitor, James. And we'll be right back. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. Welcome back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We've got our guest, James Hodges, and we're talking about art and civic life.
Yeah. So I want to talk about public art now, specifically things like, because this has been controversial, statues that commemorate people like Christopher Columbus or Robert E. Lee, right? I think public art tells a story of a people, of a community, who their heroes are, who they revered. Sometimes that changes and we don't maybe necessarily agree with the way people thought of things 200 years ago or 100 years ago, but it still tells a story. And I think it's important. I always feel a little hesitant to start moving things or getting rid of things because maybe our values changed. What do you all think?
I think there are fads that come and go. Mm-hmm. And I think we've become too addicted to that concept of having a fad that comes and goes. Something that's been sitting around, are part of our history, that's been a part of our history for hundreds of years or 100 years or even 50 years, is more durable than a fad. And it has a worthwhile place in our community and in our understanding of our life that a fad just doesn't have. And honestly, I think almost all public art that's created in the last 20 or 30 years is stuff that I wouldn't put in my living room because it doesn't speak to the history of that community and what was going on. And I don't think we should tear down the history that we have because we're not showing a lot of it now.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, maybe in the last week, about how Columbus statues are starting to reappear. And a lot of this is driven by Italian Americans who are proud of their heritage, and they feel like, well, they've been diminished somehow because of current views of Christopher Columbus. Yeah. And so there seems to be pushback. I recall a time, and I think I've shared this story once before, being in a museum and looking at ancient Greek artifacts, a lot of pottery and stuff like that, that had depictions of sexual acts between men and boys. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And I saw all of this that at a time when we were starting to take down the Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis statues, right? And I thought, well, nobody would make the argument that we need to destroy these artifacts. This was an example of Greek culture.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, this was the way of Greek life.
Right.
Many, 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 many years ago.
You can't change it now retroactively.
Right.
So I might be on the opposite end of some of this. I'm not saying that we should destroy anything, but I question having a statue of Robert E. Lee in a Confederate uniform on a horse, charging. I think that deserves to be in a museum. I'm not saying it should be destroyed, but I do question it being in a Central Park of the United States when literally you were trying to break the United States. Mm-hmm. So I differ a little bit on some people, though, because I don't think that all things should be removed. Lawrence Sullivan Ross, who is a very famous Texan, he saved the Texas A&M. There's a statue of him in the middle of campus. And some people, there was a controversy, hey, we should get rid of him, we should get rid of him. And I'm like, well, no. He's in a business suit, and the reason he's there is because he was president of A&M College, not because he was a Civil War general. If they had him in a Civil War Confederate uniform, I would tend to agree, well, maybe he should be in a museum and not on the campus. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a difference, because like you said, the Greek art of a man and a boy, I wouldn't put that out in the center of town. I don't think that should be out there. I think that should be removed and put into a museum.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I could go along with that.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And by the way, being that, the revolutionaries of America, they tore down a lot of statues of English kings and things that, like in New York, the king was torn down.
Right.
Yeah, and when the Soviet Union fell, they tore down a lot of their statues. I didn't complain too much about that. So that's a good point. It's not necessarily something new, maybe.
I don't think they should be destroyed. I agree with you that they're history. And
right.
There was a reason they were stuck there at the time. By the way, Robert E. Lee disagreed with them. He said we should not be commemorating the Confederacy. So everybody who hates Robert E. Lee, he did not think that this should continue. Hey, now we need to bind our wounds and move on as a country. And one of the ways you do that is not to praise the Confederacy.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do we do then with a figure like Christopher Columbus? Many of his statues were taken down. Columbus, Ohio is named after him. They've done a lot to erase his imagery. They had a ship at one time, a recreation of the Santa Maria, and they've let that go by the wayside. So how do we wrestle with that? Because Italian Americans are a part of American history, and they celebrate Columbus.
My own personal view, I don't think he's as evil as we want to make him out to be sometimes today, because they'll be like, well, he came over and he killed all these Native Americans, and well, he didn't. The smallpox came, and it's not like he purposely was saying, I'm going to spread this biological weapon and,
right.
and kill all these people. That's not what his goal was. Now,
that's an interpretive issue, because people are interpreting Columbus a certain way now that they didn't used to interpret him that way. With the Robert E. Lee things, everybody interpret him similarly as a leader of the Confederate Army, So I think with people like Columbus, it's more of an interpretation thing, which might get back to more of a let's teach more history thing. Because I personally believe that he was an explorer and wanted to open up new routes of trade. I don't believe he came over here to enslave and wipe out people.
Yeah.
So I think that interpretation might be improved with better history teaching.
So let me circle this back to something you were talking about earlier, Dale, about modern art. You're not a big fan of a lot of new art that's out in public. I'm wondering, is there a sensitivity now to putting forth art because people are starting to think about how somebody will interpret that art 100 years from now, and so we best stay away from public figures? Well, for example, and this is recent, and this doesn't have anything to do with public art, but now there are cities across America trying to decide how they're going to rename parks and streets named after Cesar Chavez, because we don't want to have something named after a guy who raped women, right? And so do you think that drives a lot of the thinking behind new art?
No. I think new art is driven by what people get at their cocktail parties. I think the art world is very much a relationship social environment, and whatever's in vogue gets the money, and whatever is scowled upon doesn't get done. I don't think any artist thinks about what's going to happen in 100 years. Not anymore.
So how do we then put forth, or how do we continue to advocate for public art that's meaningful
and long-lasting?
And long-lasting.
Good question. I don't know. I think when things have a connection to a town or community or history that's going on, then that can last. And that's why I think statues lasted, because there's all kinds of art throughout the years. But what we see from 100 years, 200 years are certain things, and those are the things that lasted, and those usually had a connection with something going on in that time period. So I think if somebody wanted to do a piece of public art that lasted, they would do some sort of a statue or commemoration about history. If you go to Washington, D.C., there's all kinds of fantastic artwork for various wars or events that happen in our time, and they all revolve around history. And 100 years, 200 years now, that'll still be relevant, because that'll still be an important part of American history. So I think a lot of it has to connect with what's going on. And a lot of art, okay, this is my opinion, doesn't connect anything and doesn't have any historical significance. And so that's why I think it won't last.
That's interesting. And you want to shake your fist to the sky and tell people to get off your lawn, don't you?
Yeah.
You're probably not a big fan of all the art that the city of Boerne installed, the sculptures and whatnot.
We really shouldn't go there.
It's okay. You're a former school board trustee. I'm the former city councilman. I'm the guy that's going to get in trouble. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did see one I think I liked. I can't remember what it was, but there was one I thought was okay.
They had, over the years that they were doing that program, and I'm not sure what happened because they've stopped doing it, but they had some cool pieces that they would bring in that you had to look at them from certain angles, and, you'd see something, an image come together, and then you'd step 2 feet to the left and it kind of fall apart.
It's kind of clever.
And so a lot of it was modern. In fact, all of it was modern, but I thought,
except for the Buffalo Bill statue. That one's Wild Bill.
Wild Bill.
Wild Bill Hickok's. That's a cool one.
Yeah, no, I like that too, except he has no relevance to the city of Boerne.
Never hear nothing local about that at all.
I don't know that he ever set foot anywhere in the area.
Now, there's some art galleries around here that have statues outside them, and some of those are awesome.
Yeah.
I think some of those are really cool. I don't know the artists, but there's some really good stuff there.
Yeah, you're just a traditionalist. You like all the bronzes.
I do.
I
am.
I don't have a problem with modern art. I mean, some of it, like the Jackson Pollock stuff, I never understood that because, I could have done the same thing, and when I was 5 years old, I had an art teacher in college that somebody challenged her on something, on Jackson Pollock, and she, and the student said, "Well, I could have done that," and she said, "Well, you didn't."
And he should have just said, "Yeah, I did about 500 times. My mom just threw them in the trash." Okay.
Golly, Dale.
Art's in the eye of the beholder. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Picking on the city of Boerne. That's why you have to live outside the city, and I get to live in it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I like it outside.
Ceasefire, guys.
God is my artist.
Ooh.
I've got some beautiful art around me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great recovery. That's a great. Who can argue with God? Oh, he pulls out the trump card. James, you got any thoughts on public art?
I'm not a big modern art person. When I look at something, I want to see something. I want to know what it is. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to interpret, well, what is this line here for? What is this? I probably agree with Dale on that, because on one of our trips, we went to the Met in New York, and they had, sort of where you go, I could have done that. They have the long finger, and it literally is just somebody who drew, it looks like a 5-year-old drew a finger, and I'm just like, okay. And I don't know who Jackson Pollock is. I'm sorry. I don't know who these people.
That's okay.
Probably just because I just don't get into that.
Jackson Pollock was the guy that would dip his brushes in cans of paint and then just, shake his hand and get splatters on a canvas, and then people paid him wild money for that.
And I think it looks cool. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't, but I would not pay money for it because I doodle, and I think my doodles look pretty good.
Yeah, you could always duct tape a banana to a wall too. Okay, with that, I'm going to bring up a book, and it's called The Pillars of the Earth, Ken Follett. It's an older book, and it is about the construction of a cathedral in England, and it takes place over many, 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 many years, and it's just an inspiration because it talks about their efforts to bring spirituality to the people who go to this church. And it's a really neat book, and it's just neat that it's about the building of this awesome cathedral. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and if you missed any of this, you can always go to BoerneRadio.com and listen to it there, or any other episodes, or any of their other great podcasts. Thank you. See you next week.